All right, Urban Meyer had the press conference moment of the season with, I'm not going to have that conversation. There will be zero talk about the playoff. And as we're here for the 11warriors.com web report, I'm telling you, we're here to have that conversation, Urban.
Insubordination.
Listen, folks, I think any of us would look silly, and you will look silly as Buckeye fans, to advocate for Ohio State to get into the playoff. They gave up 55 at Iowa. It cannot be ignored. These are the facts that we live in the real world, and Ohio State's path isn't even chaos anymore because chaos happened last weekend. In simplest terms, I do believe Alabama wins out, Miami wins out, Oklahoma wins out, and Wisconsin's undefeated, ranked in the top 5 when you play them in the Big Ten championship game. You're in the college football playoff, and you're going to go to the Sugar Bowl, and you're going to play Alabama, much like you guys did. I think that's a simple path that's very realistic.
It really is. But, you know, as you were painting the picture, I kind of think about how much crazier could it have been. You know, there was a chance for the first time in college football history for all 4 of the top 4 teams to go down. That would have been chaos. Obviously, you know, the roadmap is painted perfectly for us. But at the end of the day, like Coach Meyer's saying, I'm not even going to entertain the comment. We'll talk about it. But it is about every game, because if we can go out and say that, you know, we are dominant because X, Y, or Z, and it's shown in this game, that game, and this game, then we have the conversation to be had. Okay, well, you know, obviously Iowa was a bad example. Obviously Oklahoma was a bad example. So let's look at the body of work outside of that. A great Michigan State team was dismantled by us. A great, you know, an up-and-coming Michigan team was dismantled. Well, Penn State, exactly. So, I mean, you know, looking at taking the outliers out is going to kind of have to be our, you know, our breadwinner.
Dan, they're going to have an opportunity. I mean, if you think about who they're going to be fighting for that last spot, it's going to be Georgia. Is probably going to be one of those teams if they get hammered by Alabama, because they're not going to lose. I don't think they'll lose to Georgia Tech. So it'll probably be Georgia. They'll be fighting with USC probably. If USC can win out, you'll be fighting with Notre Dame. You'll be those are the programs that you're going to be in competition with, and your resume, I think, will stack up very nicely with those schools if the scenario I painted comes home. If Auburn beats Alabama, that's a big problem, because Alabama's going to get in even with the 1 loss. So you're not going to win any tiebreakers over Alabama, Miami, Clemson, or Oklahoma, but I think they're pretty good with the rest of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all comes down to, we're looking at a very likely scenario of 2 lost resumes being compared. It looks like we're going to be in that situation right now, and I think in terms of Ohio State, in terms of those teams you mentioned, in terms of Georgia losing the SEC championship game, in terms of Notre Dame being at 2 losses, in terms of USC, I think Ohio State gets in over all of those teams, because I think you could argue that Notre Dame's got the best regular season resume, but they don't have a conference championship game. We've seen this College Football Playoff Committee before favor conference champions. That would put Ohio State versus USC, and I think if you look at Ohio State's resume in the Big Ten versus USC in a weak Pac-12, that's going to favor Ohio State, especially if Wisconsin can remain undefeated and you can get an emphatic win in the Big Ten championship game.
I'll tell you what, go ahead, Ev.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's one more factor on top of that, the early loss versus late loss conversation, right? Obviously taking a loss to Oklahoma and even Iowa, you know, in relation to Georgia taking a loss in, what, the second week of November, and then potentially in our picture, them losing in the SEC championship game. 2 losses at the back end of the season compared to 2 spread out throughout the season, whole different, different, I don't know.
It makes you feel different about it, and you know, you can't erase Iowa.
No,
it happened. They gave up 55. I mean, they got hammered. I mean, you can't erase that. But the way that it sets up, and I think the real thing you need to pay attention to, because this is a really important factor, is Michigan. Wisconsin has to beat Michigan this week. You need Wisconsin going into that game ranked in the top 5. It'd be great if they were 3rd in the country going into that game, which they might be if they're undefeated. You really need that. The other thing that's a little tricky is the ACC scenario. If Miami's undefeated and loses a close game in the ACC championship game to Clemson, I could see Miami getting in. Here's the other factor in this thing, and it's one thing we can always puff our chests out by Buckeye fan standards, is we deliver TV ratings. We deliver full stadiums. And are you telling me that if Ohio State is playing Alabama in the national semifinal the way you guys did in the Sugar Bowl, because I believe that's where it is, and Alabama would have that. They'd be the number 1 overall seed. So it would be in the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. It'd be a redo of 2014, 2015. And if you think about the number that would do, I guarantee you that's the 8 o'clock game. I assure you that's the 8 o'clock game. They'll make Pasadena start at noon if they have to.
Think of the TV ratings off of that. Think of the, you know, all the back-end profit generation that they got from that.
And they claim that doesn't matter, but it does.
Of
We
course
all
they
know
factor.
it does.
This is a
It
business.
does.
There are television rights that need to be sold in the future. There's advertising buys that have to be made. There's tickets that have to be gobbled up. You telling me Alabama, Ohio State, Alabama, Miami? I'm sorry. The perception of Miami is there's this big state school. They're not. They're a little private school in Miami. It's not even close. So you're going to win those tiebreakers, and the rest of the country can be upset about it, and that's the reality of the situation. So that was that was one conversation I want to have. The second one I want to have, you guys know how I feel about these uniforms. They look cool. They're great. They look really cool. To wear them against Michigan, I do not understand. It's a money grab. I get it. Nike's paying you a lot of money to wear the uniforms. Urban gets a big check from Nike. They're going to sell 1 billion of these things at $150 a piece. As a kid growing up in Montana, if I flipped on the TV at 10 a.m. on that Saturday in November, I saw maize and blue and I saw scarlet and gray. And guess what? I'm not going to see it this Saturday. And Ohio State hasn't been doing that. You guys haven't been doing this for a while. You've been wearing alternate uniforms against Michigan for a while. Black helmets last year. I think they're cheapening. I know the brand is bulletproof, but you're cheapening your brand. You're a branding guy.
Yeah, definitely.
In that game, don't you have to be on brand?
You kind of do. And going back to even when I first got to Ohio State, all of the alternate uniforms that we were representing at the end of the year against the Michigan game were the 1942 team.
Paying homage.
Exactly. So obviously this is different. Obviously this holds kind of a different value almost. I almost would beg or make the argument that Nike said, okay, I'm giving you these helmets, wear them twice. And
well, you would have inside information on that. They would, and they don't want you wearing them against Illinois, and they don't want you wearing them at Iowa.
Marquee games. They want them when people are on TV, and it's like I said, we just talked about how money is a factor in a college ball playoff. It's a factor in uniforms, too. These things are selling at $150 a pop. They've probably already sold thousands of them. It's all about if you can get another jersey up there, they wear them in a big game. They're hoping Ohio State goes and gets another iconic win like they did against Penn State, and then people want the commemorative. They go and buy the jersey. It makes money. That's the way it works.
Think about Nike's marketing director when he saw LeBron James tweet a picture of Jerome Baker in his shoes with his arms up after victory against Penn State.
Money, money, money.
Wow.
You know what? This is the one place that I stand with Saban. This is going to be popular in the comments part that we always talk about. Saban, I'm sure they've gone to Saban and say, hey, wear some stuff for us. And Saban goes, you go straight to hell. We're going to wear the same colors every week in the same uniforms every week, and they recruit just fine. So it's not about recruiting. So when people tell you, oh, no, it's not about recruiting. It's about money. They're making a lot off them. They look cool. Just don't wear them for Michigan.
I think it's a little bit about recruiting, though.
It's mostly about money. It's mostly about money.
A little bit in there about recruiting.
It's mostly about money. It's mostly about the money. All right, good stuff. We'll do the game preview next week, folks.
See you soon.